Jasmine Crockett just dropped a bombshell that could shake the Trump family to its core. She's revealing that Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner's marriage is nothing more than a cover-up for a dark truth about Ivanka's relationship with her father, Trump. This is the video you don't want to miss. It was the kind of live broadcast that had everyone on the edge of their seats. The bright studio lights flickered as the camera zoomed in on the two figures at the center of it all. Donald Trump and Representative Jasmine Crockett, a rising star in Congress. The topic of the debate was supposed to be about the economy, healthcare, and foreign policy. Typical political issues that were meant to dominate the stage. But Trump never wanted to shy away from stirring up controversy. Had a different idea. As soon as he took the floor, he launched into a full-on attack on Crockett. "Look at her," Trump said, pointing at her. "What is she even doing here? She's not even qualified to sit in a room with someone like me." The crowd seemed split. Some gasped, some nervously chuckled. But one thing was certain: Trump knew how to get attention. His words hung in the air, cutting through the tension of the studio like a knife. He was on a roll and he was taking no prisoners. Crockett, on the other hand, didn't flinch. She remained as calm as a seasoned political strategist, composed, unwavering, her eyes sharp and focused, locked onto Trump as he continued to tear into her. He wasn't just criticizing her, he was attacking her on a personal level. But what Trump didn't know was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Instead of firing back with her own jabs, Crockett did something nobody expected. In a calm, almost chilling tone, she waited for the perfect moment when Trump finally took a breath. Then she spoke, and the entire room went silent. "You want to talk about appearances and truth?" Crockett said, her voice steady but sharp. "Then let's talk about the truth inside your own family." The words hit like a bombshell. Trump's smirk faded. The tension in the room grew thick. Everyone felt it. The sense that something huge was about to unfold. The crowd shifted in their seats. The tension was so palpable you could almost cut it with a knife. For a brief second, Trump blinked. He wasn't expecting this, but Crockett didn't give him a chance to recover. Her words were sharp, deliberate, and filled with purpose. "I'm not here to talk about politics," she continued, her voice clear. "I'm here to talk about something much more important, something that's been hidden from the American people for far too long, something dangerous." You could see the anger rise in Trump's eyes. But Crockett didn't back down. She had his attention now completely. The world was watching, and this wasn't just another debate. This was something bigger, something that could change everything. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face, now a mixture of confusion and annoyance. His usual bravado was starting to crack. He opened his mouth, likely ready to dismiss her with another insult. But Crockett wasn't done. No, this was just the beginning. She shifted her weight slightly in her chair and leaned forward. "Let's talk about your family," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took a breath. "Let's talk about your daughter, Ivanka, and your son-in-law, Jared. The marriage everyone believes is perfect. Is that really the truth?" The words hit Trump like a punch to the gut. The whole studio seemed to hold its breath. And for the briefest moment, you could see a flicker of panic in Trump's eyes. His lips tightened. His face, which had once been filled with smug confidence, now betrayed an unsettling mixture of discomfort and disbelief. "Ivanka and Jared's marriage," Crockett continued. "It's not what it seems. It's all a show, a cover-up." The room went dead silent. For the first time, Trump didn't have a witty comeback. Didn't have an insult ready. He just sat there staring at Crockett, a man on the defense in a way he had never been before. The silence was deafening. Crockett had just turned the tables on him in front of millions. But it wasn't just the boldness of her accusation that made everyone stop and listen. It was the certainty in her voice, the weight of her words, and the calm way she had delivered them. She didn't seem nervous at all. In fact, she seemed to have all the control, and that made Trump uncomfortable as the tension built in the room. The audience could feel the weight of her statement. What had Crockett just accused the Trumps of? Was this some kind of political stunt? Or was there a much darker truth lurking beneath the surface? The questions swirled, but Crockett wasn't finished. She wasn't backing down. Not now, and not in front of the world. Her eyes never left Trump's face as she waited for him to react. And as he sat there visibly shaken, the studio could sense it, the beginning of something that could rock the political world to its core. But what would Trump say next? Would he try to shut Crockett down with a wave of his hand, or would he come up with a response that could turn the tide back in his favor? The stage was set, the battle had begun, and the world was waiting. The air in the studio was thick with tension. Everyone was waiting for Trump's response to Crockett's words, but instead of the usual bluster or sarcastic remark, there was only silence. Trump's face had turned an odd shade of pale, and he didn't seem sure how to respond. Crockett, on the other hand, was just getting started. She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes locking onto Trump as the camera zoomed in on her. The room was quiet, but there was a feeling that something monumental was about to unfold, and it came with her next words. Words that would change everything. You know, Donald, the world has always seen Ivanka and Jared as the perfect power couple. Crockett began, her voice steady, but carrying an unmistakable edge. They've been together since 2009, always by each other's side in business and in politics. But what if that image you've sold the world isn't real? What if the marriage between Ivanka and Jared isn't even a real marriage? The words hung in the air like a ticking time bomb. For a moment, no one moved. The audience seemed frozen in time, unsure whether they had heard correctly. The camera panned to Trump, whose eyes widened ever so slightly. The shock was evident. The accusation was bold, almost too bold to process. Crockett's words echoed in the studio. The accusation was far-reaching, and the implications were massive. For years, Ivanka and Jared had been seen as the picture-perfect couple. Young, successful, powerful, and seemingly inseparable. Together they built empires and stood side by side in public events, and used their political influence to bolster Trump's presidency. To the public, their union was seen as a match made in political heaven. But now Crockett was challenging that narrative. She wasn't just questioning the strength of their marriage. She was accusing them of putting on a front, a facade, an act. The room began to murmur. The camera zoomed in on Ivanka and Jared's pictures on the screen, smiling together at glamorous events, their arms linked, the perfect image of a happy couple. How could this be? How could their relationship, the one built on public appearances and political influence, really be nothing more than a cover? Crockett wasn't done. She took a deep breath, her eyes now piercing through the chaos in the studio. You see, the marriage between Ivanka and Jared, she continued, was never about love. It was about protecting something far more dangerous. You see, this marriage wasn't meant to keep Ivanka and Jared happy. It was meant to protect a much bigger secret. The room grew even quieter. If the first accusation was shocking, this next one was nothing short of a bombshell. Everyone now understood what Crockett was suggesting. The very foundation of the Trump family's carefully crafted image was being questioned. The marriage was nothing more than a tool, a shield to cover up a much darker reality. Crockett's words landed hard. It's not just about keeping up appearances for the public eye. This marriage was staged to keep something hidden from the world. An affair, she said, her voice now unwavering. An affair between Ivanka Trump and her father, Donald Trump. The gasps in the studio were audible. People shifted in their seats, and a wave of disbelief seemed to sweep through the room. Was this really happening? Was Crockett seriously accusing the former president of having an affair with his own daughter? The accusation felt almost too surreal to process. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Trump's face twisted into something between disbelief and anger. But Crockett wasn't looking at him anymore. She was on a roll, and she knew she had to push forward, knowing that what she was saying could either change the political landscape or destroy her career. But for Crockett, this wasn't just about politics. It was about truth. Ivanka has always been more than just Donald's daughter, Crockett explained, her tone now tinged with urgency. She's been his closest advisor, his right-hand woman. Together they've influenced policies, made decisions that have shaped the country. Their closeness, it's more than what meets the eye. more than what anyone was ever willing to admit. That bond is not just familial. It's something else entirely. The studio audience sat in stunned silence. Some were visibly shaken. Some were furiously scribbling notes, trying to process what had just been said. For years, Ivanka and Jared's marriage had been held up as the epitome of political partnership. But now that image was crumbling piece by piece. And the accusations, the weight of what Crockett was saying were undeniable. Crockett paused, her eyes never leaving Trump. How can anyone ignore the comments you've made about Ivanka over the years, Donald? You've called her beautiful, voluptuous, and let's not forget that infamous moment when you said, if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. How do you explain that? These aren't just comments from a father. They're from someone who sees something far deeper. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face. He was visibly uncomfortable, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. The tension was almost unbearable. His lips tightened as he looked at Crockett, but no words came out. And then, with the tension at its peak, Crockett let it all hang out. This marriage, Ivanka and Jared's, is nothing but a cover-up, she said, her voice a political strategy to shield the truth, to protect Donald Trump and Ivanka's dirty little secret. The world watched in disbelief. The accusation was out there, and now the question remained. Was this the truth, or was it just a carefully crafted lie to tear down one of the most powerful families in the country? As the tension lingered in the air, the audience waited with bated breath. Would Trump deny it? Would he retaliate? The next move was his. But for now it was clear Crockett had just changed the game. The studio was on fire, with anticipation after the bombshell accusations from Representative Jasmine Crockett. All eyes were now on Donald Trump. The room was filled with a nervous energy, and the weight of her words hung in the air like a thick fog. Crockett had opened the door to something huge. But now it was Trump's turn to react, and more importantly, to defend himself. As the tension swirled, Crockett wasn't finished. She knew that Trump's past comments about Ivanka weren't just public record. They were explosive pieces of evidence, ammunition that could change the course of the debate, and potentially the entire narrative. You know, Crockett continued, her voice steady and unwavering, this isn't just about what's happening behind closed doors. This is about what you've already said, what you've already made public. Your own words, Donald. You can't hide from that. Trump's face tightened, but Crockett wasn't backing down. She took a deep breath. Then, with a calmness that was almost chilling, she brought up his past comments. Comments that many had dismissed as nothing more than awkward father-daughter jokes. But when viewed through the lens of what she had just claimed, those comments began to look a whole lot more sinister. I've heard you speak about Ivanka countless times, Crockett said, her eyes now fixed on Trump, each word cutting through the air with precision. You've called her beautiful, voluptuous, and you even went as far as to say, if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. The gasps in the room were audible. The words Crockett spoke weren't new to the public, but hearing them now in this context made them feel like a gut punch. They were no longer just awkward comments. They were part of the larger narrative that Crockett was weaving, a narrative that painted a much darker picture. Trump's lips pressed into a thin line, his jaw clenched, but Crockett was relentless. These aren't the words of a father talking about his daughter, Donald, she pressed. These are the words of someone who sees something else, something beyond the normal boundaries of a father-daughter relationship. How can you explain that? The room was dead silent. Trump opened his mouth, likely ready to fire back, but Crockett wasn't finished yet. She pushed forward, her voice calm but filled with conviction. Let's be clear here, she said, her eyes scanning the audience. You've publicly objectified Ivanka. These comments, these jokes, they aren't just harmless slip-ups. They show a pattern, and they make your relationship with Ivanka look far more complicated, far more disturbing than what anyone was willing to admit. As the camera zoomed in on Trump's face, it was clear that the accusations were starting to take their toll. His usual bravado, the arrogant smile he wore like armor, seemed to be slipping. He shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. He knew he couldn't deny these comments, but the more Crockett spoke, the more these words began to haunt him. They were out there in the public eye, and no amount of bluster or deflection could erase them now. The tension in the studio reached a boiling point as Crockett brought up another critical point. Do you remember the time you said, "If Ivanka weren't my daughter, I'd be dating her"? She asked, her voice now carrying a weight of its own. How does a father say something like that? Is it a joke? Is it a mistake? Or is it a reflection of something much deeper? You said that on national television, and the world heard you. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, knowing the gravity of the situation. Trump's face flushed red as his fingers gripped the edge of the table, his chest heaving as though trying to catch his breath. The uncomfortable silence between them grew thicker. You've built an empire on power, Donald, on manipulating the public image. You've always been able to brush off criticism, to spin things in your favor, Crockett continued, her words steady and deliberate. But now the truth is out. Your own words are hanging in the air. You can't erase them. The studio remained frozen in suspense. Crockett had just connected the dots in a way that couldn't be ignored. She wasn't just criticizing Trump. She was exposing a deeper truth, using his own words to build the case against him. And now Trump had nowhere to hide. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face. As the anger began to rise, he shifted in his seat again, visibly uncomfortable. But Crockett's eyes never left his. It was as though she had caught him in a trap, and now there was no escape. The former president's lips twitched, his eyes flashing with the kind of fury that had driven him to the top of the political ladder. He was furious, but Crockett stood her ground. Her eyes were locked on him, unwavering as she delivered the final blow. You've spent years manipulating public perception, hiding behind this family image of power and unity. But now the truth is out there. These comments you've made, they can't be erased. The world has heard them, and now you have to answer for them. For a moment, Trump said nothing. He seemed to be stewing in his anger, processing the weight of Crockett's words. But the damage had been done. The truth was now on the table. His own words, the words he had said so casually in the past, had come back to haunt him. And as Crockett leaned back, her expression unwavering, she knew this was only the beginning. The public's perception of Trump and his relationship with Ivanka would never be the same again. The room was electric with tension. What would Trump say next? Would he admit to the truth? Or would he try to spin the situation in his favor, turning the tables once again? The clock was ticking. The world was waiting, and the battle for the truth was far from over. The heat in the studio was unbearable now. Representative Jasmine Crockett had just unleashed a bombshell, exposing uncomfortable truths about Donald Trump's relationship with his daughter, Ivanka. But now she wasn't just questioning the past comments, she was connecting the dots. And the picture she was painting wasn't one anyone could easily ignore. Ivanka's marriage to Jared Kushner, Crockett said, her voice carrying the weight of a revelation, isn't what it seems. It's not a love story. It's a strategic alliance, a carefully orchestrated cover-up to shield the truth, to shield Trump. The room fell into a stunned silence as her words sank in. Was she accusing them of faking their marriage? Was this really about power, manipulation, and politics rather than love? Crockett's gaze never wavered from Trump as she continued, almost as if she was laying out a master plan for all to see. Look at the timing, she pressed, raising her hand to emphasize her point. Ivanka marries Jared in 2009, right at the B-point when Trump is beginning to solidify his public image. They're the perfect couple. Young, attractive, successful, powerful. They were a political and personal partnership on full display. They were everything people wanted to see. Trump shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. He wanted to fight back, but Crockett wasn't giving him any room. She was relentless now, weaving a web that could entangle everything he had worked so hard to build. But here's the truth, Crockett said, turning to the audience as she spoke. This marriage was never just about love. It was a smokeox, a shield, a way to create the illusion of a perfect family. And behind it, hidden in plain sight, is the real story. Trump and Ivanka's much more complicated, much more disturbing relationship. Her words hit harder than anything Trump could have anticipated. The idea of their marriage as a shield to protect them from scrutiny was bold. It was daring.
But it wasn't just about the marriage. It was about how they used it, how it served as a way to divert attention from the darker truths that had been floating just beneath the surface. Trump sat up straighter, his hands clenched into fists, but Crockett pushed on, unfazed by his growing frustration. Jared Kushner, she continued, wasn't just Ivanka's husband. He was a key player in Trump's White House, a senior advisor with huge influence, especially in matters of the economy, international diplomacy, and even family business deals. His role in the White House wasn't just political, it was strategic. And when you pair that with Ivanka's position, her frequent appearances by Trump's side in political meetings, press conferences, and high-stakes business dealings, it's clear they were both in it together, not just as a couple, but as a team. At this point, the audience was hanging on every word. The dynamic was becoming clearer, and with each passing second, Crockett was starting to connect more dots than anyone had ever dared to before. But that's not the full story, Crockett said, her eyes locked on Trump. What if their marriage wasn't just about power? What if it was about covering up something even bigger, something too dangerous for the family to ever admit? What if Ivanka's marriage to Jared wasn't just to protect her own reputation, but to protect Trump, to protect his image as a family man, as a father, protect him from the very questions you're trying to silence right now? The camera zoomed in on Trump's face, which had gone pale. His chest was rising and falling, with controlled breath, but his eyes were wild, searching for an escape from the uncomfortable truth that was unfolding in front of him. His hands trembled slightly, but he couldn't hide his panic. The carefully constructed family image he had spent decades building was beginning to unravel in real time. Crockett's tone was now more commanding, as if she had taken complete control of the narrative. Trump doesn't just play the game, he controls it. The family's image is everything to him, and if protecting his image means orchestrating a marriage between Ivanka and Jared, then that's exactly what he'll do. The audience could feel the rising tension. The idea of their marriage being strategic, nothing more than a political tool to protect a Trump brand, was shocking. But Crockett wasn't done yet. The truth is, she continued, leaning forward slightly, Jared and Ivanka's marriage wasn't about building a life together. It was about building a shield to deflect from the whispers, from the real story. It kept the focus on them as a power couple, while the truth stayed buried behind the scenes. The room was quiet, but Crockett wasn't finished. Trump wasn't just protecting his family's reputation, he was protecting his political empire, his business empire. The family image was the key to everything. If Ivanka and Jared's marriage was exposed as a sham, it would damage everything: his image, his political influence, and his legacy. It was becoming clear now. Trump's need for control, his manipulation of the public's perception, was far more insidious than anyone could have realized. The marriage was more than just an alliance. It was part of a larger game to maintain power, to manipulate how the world saw the Trump family. It wasn't just a family affair. It was a calculated move to protect the Trump brand at all costs. And as Crockett leaned back in her chair, she let the weight of her words settle into the silence. She had exposed something more than just a marriage. It was the method behind the madness, the lengths to which Trump was willing to go to control the narrative and maintain his grip on power. The questions were out there now in the open. Was the marriage real, or was it all a facade, an elaborate cover-up, designed to protect an even darker secret? Trump was fuming, but Crockett had done her job. The truth was out. Now it was his turn to respond. Would he try to spin the story, or would he finally face the reality that his family's carefully crafted image might just be falling apart? The stakes had never been higher. The fallout from this confrontation was only beginning, and one thing was certain: the Trump family's image, the very foundation of their political dynasty, was under attack in a way that couldn't be undone. The questions loomed large, and as the camera panned out, the world was left waiting for Trump's next move. As Representative Jasmine Crockett wrapped up her bombshell accusation, the tension in the studio was palpable. The words she had just unleashed hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud, and everyone knew that something monumental was about to unfold. Trump, for all his bravado, was clearly rattled. But what would happen next? It didn't take long for the inevitable to occur. Donald Trump, never one to let a challenge go unanswered, erupted in anger. His face, once composed, now flushed with rage. His hands slammed down onto the desk in front of him, shaking the table with a loud thud that startled everyone in the room. "Lie!" Trump shouted, his voice rising, dripping with venom. "This is absolute nonsense. She's just trying to make a name for herself. This is sick. It's disgusting." The crowd in the studio tensed, some recoiling at the intensity of his outburst, others simply shocked by how far he was willing to go to discredit his accuser. The cameras focused on his contorted expression, capturing every detail of his fury. It was as if the accusations had struck a raw nerve, one Trump couldn't ignore. This wasn't the cool, calculated politician the public was used to seeing. It was the primal, enraged man who was fighting to protect everything he had built. Crockett, however, remained eerily calm, her eyes locked on Trump, unwavering in her conviction. The contrast between her composure and his explosive reaction was striking. While Trump's anger seemed to escalate, Crockett's steady gaze only made her argument stronger. "You can shout all you want, Mr. Trump," Crockett said, her voice quiet but firm. "But the truth is, your words about Ivanka are out there, and they've been out there for a long time. The public has heard them. You can't just erase them." Her calmness in the face of Trump's rage seemed almost to fuel the fire. Trump, clearly rattled, began pacing, muttering to himself as he tried to collect his thoughts. But his anger was palpable. His hands flew up in exasperation, and his voice hit new levels of hysteria. "This is ridiculous. I don't care what anyone says. Ivanka and Jared are happily married. You're just trying to stir up trouble. This is fake news. Pure and simple." But as he spoke, Crockett's words were already sinking deeper into the audience's consciousness. The more he raged, the more the viewers at home saw the cracks in his armor. His response wasn't calm or measured. It was desperate. It was as if he was trying to convince not just the audience, but himself. For a brief moment, the camera zoomed in on Trump's face, and there was a flicker of doubt. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. As he stood there shouting, his eyes darted around almost as if he was searching for something, an escape, a way to undo the damage. He was no longer just fighting against Crockett. He was fighting against the truth that had been exposed. Crockett, however, wasn't done. She leaned forward, her tone now even more pointed. "You can call me a liar all you want, Mr. Trump, but the truth is out there. Everyone has seen those comments, and now we're all watching your reaction." The cameras, of course, never missed a beat. As Trump raged and sputtered, they captured his every movement, the furious gestures, the clenched jaw, the sweat on his brow. It was as though his public persona was slipping away, revealing the emotional and defensive man beneath the image of the unflappable leader. "Don't you dare talk to me about truth," Trump shouted, his fist balled up so tightly his knuckles turned white. "You're nothing but a fraud. I built an empire, and you're just trying to tear it down with your lie." Crockett's expression softened just slightly, but there was no mistaking her satisfaction. She knew she had him. Her accusation had clearly struck a nerve, and now Trump was doing all the work for her. His outrage only confirmed the very thing she had claimed, that there was something deeper, darker, and more troubling going on. "Maybe I am a fraud, Mr. Trump," Crockett said, her words like ice, "but at least I'm not hiding the truth. And the truth is, your family's image, your legacy, it's built on lies." Trump's reaction was becoming more erratic by the second. His voice was cracking now, his words coming faster, almost too fast for anyone to process. "Enough. You have no idea what you're talking about. Ivanka and Jared are a power couple, a great couple. This is sick. This is sick." But even as Trump tried to shout over her, Crockett's words were landing harder than any of his insults. It wasn't just what he was saying, it was how he was saying it. His rage wasn't just a defense, it was an admission. The more he tried to deny her allegations, the clearer it became that something in his reaction had shifted. This wasn't just a defensive outburst, it was a sign of his growing panic. The studio was on edge now. Everyone knew something huge was happening, but no one knew how it would end. Would Trump find a way to turn the tide? Would Crockett continue to hold her ground, further exposing the cracks in Trump's empire. The drama was far from over. In fact, this was just the beginning. The fallout from this encounter was only starting to reverberate through the media, and the public had only one question on their minds: what happens next? For now, all anyone could do was watch as Trump's carefully constructed image began to crumble piece by piece. His response had only made things worse, and the world was waiting for the next twist in this explosive showdown. The questions kept piling up, and as the cameras rolled, the answers seemed further out of reach than ever before. So what do you think? Was Crockett right to expose the secrets? Or did she go too far? Were these just unsubstantiated rumors, or is there something darker beneath the surface? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts could be the key to unlocking this mystery.